Welcome everyone to MailFuzz TV. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about Black Mirror Season 7 Episode 3. It's called Hotel Reverie. So spoilers for the episode as always. This is an interesting one to talk about. I feel like I've got a lot to say about this episode. The premise inherently I found very interesting. It was kind of appealing to my sensibilities because I love movies and I love sort of, you know, looking into the making of movies and like the magic of old movies and kind of like things existing still and finding something to fall in love with that's been around for so long. Like all these ideas, really cool. The quickest way to sort of describe this is it's almost like a Last Action Hero, or more specifically the Final Girls, in that a person goes into a movie. And there's a lot of context around it in this case because there's a whole setup about how they're kind of remaking a movie and it's kind of an AI thing but not quite, and like an actor, the main character in this case, Brandy, played by Issa is sort of put into like a Matrix style movie set where she's going to play out the role of the main character in the movie, this old movie from the 40s. The episode starts with like a trailer, like the original trailer for this old fake movie, and it kind of sets up that we're going to be playing with that. And there's a lot of really cool ideas that come out of, like, you know, having the control room where Awkwafina's character is like sort of like giving her notes in her ear and telling her what to do. And there's even a little bit of Cabin in the Woods there almost, with the idea of like the control room watching as she's trying to like recreate the movie, but living in it and it feeling real, even though it's a black and white world that she's in. All these cool ideas. I think when I booted up IMDb just before I started recording there, because I always have it in front of me just so I can check character names because I'm terrible at remembering those things, this is the lowest rated episode of the season. And I'm a little surprised by that because I think I probably prefer it to at least the second episode. Maybe in some ways the first, although I have one problem with this episode, really, right? The first half of this episode, I genuinely was in love with it. And I thought it was kind of on the path to being a special episode and maybe like the breakout episode of the season. And I have lots of reasons for that, which I'll get into in a minute. But the back half of the episode kind of put this ceiling on it. And almost like, I'll just say the romance, like the actual falling in love part of the episode, I think is the weakest element of the story. And sadly, kind of like, because as it was going, it kind of like goes from being this Final Girls-esque going into a movie story that's like revealing a lot of things about an actress from this older time period, and kind of pivots into feeling like, you know, an updated or new take on San Junipero, which I don't mind because I love San Junipero. It's literally my favorite episode of the whole show. And I think part of that I really, really loved, and I'll talk about that. But once it became just about the main character, Brandy, falling in love with the now kind of self-aware movie character who's kind of aware of who she is as an actress, I actually think that part wasn't needed. And it's kind of like a shame that it went down kind of a more generic path with that at the end, because the entire last like 25 minutes kind of revolves around the fact that Brandy really cares about her in a romantic way. And that's a shame to me because I just don't think that it was necessary. I think there was so much interesting stuff before we hit that point. And I don't hate the back half. Like I think it works. It's just not special in the way. And they know that it's like San Junipero to a point because they even have the address of the main character be not San Junipero, just Junipero Lane, I think it was, on the box at the end. But it kind of becoming about that was weird for me because that's not what I was getting into from it. Obviously, there was always going to be like a little bit of a romance element because she's playing the character that's meant to seduce the old movie character, who's named as Dorothy? Or no, I think they were going by Dora. Well, no, really? I don't remember her saying that name. It was like Clara was the movie character. No, I guess Dorothy was the actress's name. Now I'm thinking about it. They said Clara a lot, though, because that was the character, right? That was the old movie character. But the actress who played her was Dorothy, so we kind of interchanged the names a little bit as we go, so that's just going to be confusing for me to talk about. But anyway, like, the whole idea that because things start to change in the movie, right? The idea that Brandy is taking over the role that was originally this man, right? Old school 40s movie, where she's playing the leading man, and that's a big part of her character, is that she's sick of playing the attractive love interest, or she's sick of doing the kind of the tortured dramas that do well at festivals. Like, she gets two type of roles, and she's sick of it, right? And her agent, who's playing Bellatrix, shout out for putting Bellatrix in the in the show, Charlie, very good. Um, you know, he mentions, oh hey, this role, this idea is going, right, this idea of recreating the old movie, and Brandy doesn't actually get the USB stick. She drops it and doesn't know exactly what the process is going to be. She just thinks she's going to go for a test to then be in a regular remake of a movie. But it's this whole technique where they're going to hook her up kind of Matrix style or Inception style, even, to put another kind of comparison in there, where she's just going to be inside the dream world of the movie, and our characters are going to watch it on a control room, give her direction, and try and keep it on track. But they're going to effectively do it like it's a play, where she has to kind of do it in the runtime of the movie. So right away, I was in love with this premise because I just thought it was fun. I thought it was like, oh, like things are going to clearly go off track, and they're going to have to find ways to get it back on track. And that's a big part of early on, is like, oh shit, the murder attempt on the main character, the love interest, Clara, didn't go down properly because something changed, because Brandy can't play the piano, and that's something that affects the outcome. And then that leads to another character not getting involved with the police, which means that they're not going to show up and save the day later on, so we have to fix that somehow. And of course we get the prime kind of danger that is, oh, once things have went off track, apparently now we can't pull Brandy out, and if she doesn't get to the end of the movie, she might actually just die for real. So there's kind of stakes involved. But there's kind of, until we get to that point, there's a bit more of a lighthearted kind of commenting on what's going on. I kind of like the head of the studio, who's this like old British woman who's kind of got a bit of a no-nonsense attitude, but in a very kind of likable way, where she's kind of commenting on stuff. So you've got all this going on, and this is kind of a fun idea to me. Like, I enjoyed the setup of this, but where the real meat of the story started to come, where I was getting really in love with the science fiction element of it, was where we get to a point where Brandy accidentally says Clara's real name. She says the actress's name. She says Dorothy. And she has this moment of like, why did you call me that name? You know, Martha, why did you say that name? Like, she recognizes it in this weird way. And it's like, okay, why is she recognizing it? She's just meant to be like an AI construct of who the character is. She shouldn't have any awareness of the real person. But we kind of hinted at and find out a bit more here from the tech guy, who's the actor who's in a Ted Lasso, actually. He's like the sort of the towel boy. I don't know, whatever you call that role in the football team. But he explains that, you know, part of like recreating everything and recreating the sets is that they used all the dailies, and they used audition footage, and they used everything they had to feed into the system to recreate the idea of them making the movie. And that means that a lot of who the actress really was is kind of in there on a subconscious level, all the parts that went into it from all these other things. And early on, I was thinking, oh, this is going to be commenting a lot on AI and using all these different things to build something. I feel like it was less about that as it went on, and it was more about some other things. And that was just kind of the vehicle that was used to get to the more interesting stuff. And that more interesting stuff, to me, is the idea that we were going to discover that this actress, Dorothy, had a lot of the similar feelings that Brandy in present day is having, right? This idea that she wanted to have better roles that weren't just the love interest, and this idea that one of the things that Brandy kept saying early on is like, why can't I be the one pursuing someone? I don't want to be the love interest. I want to be the main character who's pursuing the love interest. And there's kind of an irony that when they start having these romantic scenes together, it's actually like Clara jumps in and starts pursuing her and being the one who leads the conversation. And it's almost a little bit of a kind of a funny outcome that Brandy wanted to do the pursuing, but instead what we're finding out here is that there was this instinct that seemingly Dorothy, who originally played Clara and is now the kind of this amalgamation inside the system, clearly she wanted to do that too. And she's kind of taking this chance to be the pursuer. And it's not that Brandy is going to get mad about that, but it's kind of like we're discovering who this person really was through these echoes in the art. And then, you know, it feeds into this idea of like, you know, when an actor dies, like there's, unlike a lot of other people in history, there's kind of this version of them that lives on. And maybe there's some like little slithers of truth in there, you know, if they put a bit of themselves into the performance, and like these kind of bigger ideas, like I was really getting into the concepts of. And it's this way of kind of like comparing, to me, like, it was less going down the path of, oh, they're going to fall in love, even though that's definitely something the movie character is going to happen with, and she's going to feel those things. But it was more just this idea that Brandy would recognize that a lot of the feelings she has now are the feelings that this Dorothy actress had back in the day, and that she would relate to her. And it was tragic for Dorothy because Dorothy ended up killing herself, right? And that was something that was revealed early on as well. And we were going to discover that, no, she does have this sense of sadness in her, and we're going to find out maybe more about who she is, like, through the art. And in a weird way, it would almost be like a positive outcome of all this AI bollocks, is that we'd kind of like discover some stuff that's in there that we would never have found otherwise. And that there was like a person to discover, and we could find out who this person truly was, and not just the facade that was presented in the movies or in the press around the movies, because that's something that kind of comes up as well a little bit later on. So, like, these ideas of like discovering who this person was, like buried within the underlying like movie, was kind of fascinating to me, and kind of beautiful, and like sort of a romanticization of what movies can be, and this idea that we connect with them in some level that isn't just the final story on the screen or whatever. Like, all of this was appealing to me. And obviously one of the big things is the plot kind of goes off the rails, and they have to try and think of a way to get it back on track. So I thought at this point that the episode was going to go down this path where we're going to still kind of stick to the structure of the movie, but have to try and fix things. But along the way, there'd be lots of little things that come out about the real person. Maybe there'd be a little bit more of the real Dorothy coming out, and there'd be more kind of, not necessarily subtle, but just more parallels between her and Brandy, and like ways to reveal who she was through the movie, kind of breaking down in these little ways that they'd have to try and fix. And it would, I don't know, like I thought it was going to stick to that a bit more rigidly, and I wasn't mad that it didn't. When everything breaks down because the one tech guy spills his coffee on the computer, I was like, okay, this is interesting, and she's got a bit more going for her, that she stays on pause, right? Clara / Dorothy stays on pause along with Brandy when the rest of the world is freezing. It breaks down, and they have this kind of Inception rule where time moves much quicker for them in there. So even though it's only minutes, maybe 10 minutes in the real world of them trying to fix everything, they spend days and days and days, if not weeks and weeks and weeks, inside this virtual world. And Brandy freaks out and kind of just starts revealing everything to Dorothy / Clara, that she's not real and blah, 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 blah. And obviously she doesn't know how to take that. And she tries to explain it to her by saying, hey, everything's in black and white. What color is this banana? And she just says, it's the color a banana always is, which is a very vague, kind of non-committal response. And at this point, I was like, okay, this is interesting. Where are we going with this? We're going to get this idea of, like, maybe her still being alive in this new way. Like, again, this idea that this echo of this person can become something that's kind of alive again. And given that her life tragically ended early when she was really alive, this could be like a weird second chance for her. So I'm already kind of starting to feel San Junipero vibes at this point. But especially when we start to discover some more of the real her, right? So she ends up stepping outside the perimeter of the set, right? She goes to the edge. You can see it's like a matte painting or whatever, or a wooden set. And she sort of steps through it like a portal, and she's just in a void. But because she's outside the set, and one of the techies even says, oh, she'll be able to access all of the data, like just all of the raw data that was put into the system. So she basically starts looking through and seeing flashes of the newspaper clippings, of the various bits of footage on set, and kind of it's this weird like out-of-body experience where she's seeing like who she really was in a sense. And the big thing that's revealed here that's very San Junipero is we find out that she was gay and that she was attracted to a woman who worked on the movie. I don't know if she's like a costume designer or maybe the makeup lady or someone, but someone who was on set. And we keep seeing her like share these glances at her, and it's kind of beautiful. And this stuff was really working for me, as much as it was feeling very San Junipero. It did feel like a really novel kind of way to kind of do a new spin on that. This idea that we're not finding out in like the virtual reality of someone who's on their deathbed and is going to die soon. We're finding out years and years later via all the bits of information that a computer's kind of cobbled together, and like the self-awareness of the construct is starting to kind of realize all this stuff. And that makes sense why she was so readily able to be attracted to Brandy, because she already kind of had some of those feelings and instincts. But you also see kind of some of the things that tortured her, and obviously being gay in the 40s in a high profile position as an actor, like she wasn't very easy for all the obvious reasons. But one of the things that it specifically shows you is that the press kept trying to build this idea that she might have a real romance with her co-star, the leading man, and they really wanted to push that narrative, and that was something that was kind of eating at her and torturing her, and maybe made her feel trapped, that she would never be able to just be who she really is or who she wants to be, and it ends tragically in her death. And I there's lots of great bits of writing in here. Like, Charlie Brooker has not missed a beat in terms of setting things up and paying them off. Like, something as simple early on is when the delivery lady comes to Brandy and gives her like the script and stuff, and she's like, "Hey, I like the movie you were in," and immediately starts saying, "Hey, are you with that other actor, that guy?" Like, immediately it turns into this narrative of talking about the men that she's related to with her fame, rather than her herself. And it kind of turns a little bit sour, and Brandy has to kind of make an excuse to leave as quickly as possible and tell her to go away. But that idea that the greater world tries to force this narrative onto you, and I never really took it as the story kind of like saying that Brandy feels the exact same way as Dorothy. I mean, it's fine if she is also gay or bi or whatever, but I didn't really think that was necessarily what the point was supposed to be. Because I think even the idea that when she's first going in and Awkwafina's talking to her over the radio, or virtual radio, I guess, whatever you want to call it, she says, "Hey, is everyone here not going to like notice that I'm suddenly a black woman? Like, is that not going to be an issue?" And Awkwafina says, "Oh, it won't even cross their minds. They won't even think of it. They have no context of anything outside this world. It won't even come up or be something they acknowledge." And it's fine in the moment, and it makes sense why she's saying that and what it means. But it kind of like is kind of this larger representation of the idea of like the narrative being projected onto you, just ignoring part of you. And to me, that was how it was related to Dorothy, and this idea that obviously there's a lot of reasons why she couldn't necessarily be public as a gay woman in the time period she was in, but this idea of comparing just that she is just, it's going to be ignored that she's black. No one's going to pay attention to that. It's like she isn't even that, right? She is, but it's like all the characters don't acknowledge it, and it's the same way that no one would ever acknowledge or even like consider the idea that Dorothy was a lesbian, because it just wouldn't even cross their minds. And I think there's a direct parallel between those things as well. And like I say, all these parallels of like both maybe seemingly wanting to do more with their careers, wanting stronger roles, wanting to be the pursuer, not wanting to be put in the box that society's put them into. I think all those links are so strong to me, and it's why I don't think you need the actual romance part. Once it starts doing the time lapse of them just like spending like days, like being in love and waking up together. I mean, I didn't necessarily mind it, and I got it from like Dorothy's perspective, as that for her this is a chance to feel a romance and be herself. So I understood it from that character's perspective. I think it was more just the idea that Brandy completely and utterly fell for. Not that I don't think that Brandy shouldn't feel something for her. Like, I think Brandy should want to like give her closure and the experience and want to save her life in the context of the movie story that they're playing out and things like that, and feel this sense of like to relate to her and like find comfort in sort of understanding who she is as a person, because she's an actress who doesn't really feel like anyone gets her in present day, and she's been able to be this outlet for this echo of a woman who'd had no chance of anyone understanding her back in the day. And I think there's something beautiful in that. They didn't necessarily need to have Brandy at one point saying, "Hey, what if I just don't come out? What if I just stay in here and be in love?" And for me, that was the bridge a bit too far, where it felt like it was becoming more like it wanted to just be San Junipero again too much. Because it worked in San Junipero. It was fantastic in that episode. It was original, it was fresh, and it made sense because it was this kind of like they're both on the way out kind of story, and the context of it. But for me here, like the romantic part of it was more like in service of other better ideas. So it being kind of more like, oh no, it's all about the fact that she doesn't want her to die and is heartbroken that her memories reset when they get the movie replaying again. Like, for me, that was where it was like, okay, I see why this idea works, and I don't think it's bad necessarily, but it felt like it was sort of drifting away from what I was really in love with the episode. And I think the last like 15-20 minutes are solid. They're fun and they're still good, and I love a lot of the technical qualities of the episode. You know, it's just something as simple as the sound on like the characters who are inside the black and white movie always sound like an old movie. There's always just that little bit of a even the way to call it, just a little bit of a crackle and hiss to the audio on their dialogue, just their dialogue and nothing else. They just made it feel so distinct from all the people in the real world talking. I really appreciated that. Just little details, like when they send her the Blu-ray of Hotel Reverie and she's watching it, like it literally says like Dolby True HD in the playback bar at one point, and that's just me being a nerd because like I'm used to those kind of things. But you know, they went through a lot of the effort to get the details right, and obviously the streaming service they're making it for is the same one that they brought up before. Was it Streamberry? I think they call it, but they've used that in previous seasons for stories. So there's a little bit of connective tissue with other Black Mirror episodes. So yeah, I was in love with so much of what this episode was doing and so many of the concepts. I just kind of wish it had a little bit of restraint, honestly, and kind of hit a lot of the same ideas and made it maybe be a little bit more skewed towards just sort of like discovering who this person really was and how much of a comfort that is to Brandy and what she can learn from her, and maybe even appreciate like how things are, you know, a little bit different for her, even if there is so much that's the same or comparable. Maybe there could be some really nice ideas there. It's definitely got uplifting qualities to it, but it is kind of funny to me that the episode's final beats are she goes home, the movie's out, all that stuff, and basically Awkwafina at some points clearly has realized that there's been a genuine connection between Brandy and Dorothy, and has kind of understood it to some extent. Has basically sent her like a little, you know, like device that hooks into her computer where like Dorothy is in there alive. Well, maybe not entirely, but like it's from her audition tape. And we saw this earlier in the movie where she was pretending to be on the phone and she had a hard time doing it. But now Brandy has like a phone that connects to her computer and can actually talk to her. And that's how the movie ends, where Dorothy says, "Yeah, I've got all the time in the world to talk to you." And not knowing who she is, of course, so not remembering Brandy. Like that none of that exists anymore. But that's how it ends. And that's kind of a weird ending to me in a lot of ways, because I get that it's like a comfort that she gets to talk to her again. And maybe you could say that this represents the idea that we can keep revisiting movies that mean something to us. And I do like that idea, right? That's really cool. The idea that we, you know, these movies get to always be with us, so we always get to revisit those characters. I think that works in that sense. But I think the fact that they made her like absolutely fall in love with her and genuinely even consider staying in the virtual world to stay with her, makes it feel a little bit unhealthy almost, that she's still going to cling to her. So it kind of maybe skewed that a little bit for me. But I do genuinely like the idea of like, you know, we can keep revisiting movies, so they're always there for us to go back to, and they are a comfort because of that. I like that element to it. And there is definitely that romantic idea of even the way she first brings up Hotel Reverie way back in the scene with her agent at the start of the movie. She says it with this big smile on her face. It makes her feel warm and happy to think about that movie. And I think that's a big part of the comfort that they can bring. And even if there is shadier parts behind the movies that aren't as nice, there's still these individual people who had their own problems and their own, you know, loves, you know, whether that was the movie making itself or other things that were going on. They still put themselves and all of their passion into the movie, and we still get to connect to that however many years later. And that's the beautiful part of the episode that I love. And I love the idea of discovering more about her, and that parts of her still kind of echo through time because she got to be immortalized in a movie in some way. And using the science fiction to kind of interact with that, I think is great. I just think the romance part of it feels a little bit kind of more generic, a bit more tropey, and a bit more of like an easy path to try and get some drama by the end, when I don't really think it needed it. I think the idea of just trying to like save the character of Dorothy and learning, or Clara, and learning a bit more of Dorothy throughout. And maybe, admittedly, I still think you want the self-realization by the end. You know, where we get to discover that she really had like a love interest in real life that she was into, and that was kind of having to suppress that as part of why she ended up dying. Like, I think that stuff should still be in there in some capacity, but I think the romance itself and that being like such a central idea, you know, but the movie changing to work in these different ways is good. And I do like the performances from the two leads. I think the old time movie acting works really well, especially this idea that Brandy does feel kind of out of place and very modern, the way she speaks versus everyone else. But by the time we get to the end and she chooses to she tries to like give herself up to go to prison instead of Dorothy, because now the ending's changed and she's killed her husband to save Brandy. So the whole ending's thrown out of whack and the police are going to arrest her. Brandy says she'll say she did it, but then Dorothy takes the gun and says, no, like, you know, it was me. I'm not letting you do that. And I think the idea that there's some kind of like, oh, sacrifice for each other here kind of thing. Like, maybe it would have almost been more interesting if Dorothy could still remember everything at that point. Maybe that would have made it more of like a genuine choice to be, no, like, what if she said, no, you have to go live your life. You've got the real world to go back to. You're not doing this for me, kind of thing. I don't know. But I think it just goes in some directions in the back half that I think they'll work and are still enjoyable to watch, but not as amazingly special or interesting as a lot of the things that it was setting up in the first half, which is actually makes it feel really weird for me overall to like get to the conclusion and say, what do I feel about the episode? I think I'm still pretty positive on it, and I still think I like a lot of what it's doing, but I'm also a little disappointed that it is not truly special, because I think it could have been. I think if you rework the back half of this episode and not go down the sort of the easy, cheap romance kind of like angle to it and keep it a bit more kind of restrained, I think you have something that's potentially a true kind of like science fiction love letter to how we kind of can look back at movies and kind of still feel like we get something from them and like appreciate the people that were in them and what they put themselves into it and all that. I think there's a lot of special things here, and the episode just goes out of its way to just not be quite what it could be by the end, and that's a bit of a shame. So I do think the rating on IMDb seems a bit harsh. I don't know if that's just, you know, assholes on the internet because there's gay characters in it or something. I don't know, but you know, maybe I'm more positive than others. Maybe other people have more of a problem with where it goes than I do. I don't know, but I do have a lot of love for a lot of what's in this. It just kind of doesn't deliver on it by the end as much as I wanted it to, which is a shame. But anywho, that's my thoughts on Hotel Reverie. Let me know what you thought of the episode in the comments below. Like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, all that stuff helps out a bunch if you do. And of course, you can support all the content over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and help keep it coming, both here on MailFuzz TV and over in MailFuzz Movies, where all the movie podcasts live. So go check out that as well. You can also do YouTube membership if that's more your thing. Any support from any avenue is greatly appreciated. Thank you for joining me. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?